Welcome to Learn English Professionals, brought to you by the British Council.
Table of content.
The Airbus.
Everything about this aeroplane is enormous. The numbers are truly mind-boggling. Its overall length is 73 metres. That's about as long as the Great Sphinx in Egypt. The giant two-deck fuselage will typically have 550 seats, but has the potential to carry up to 800 passengers. The tail, at 21 metres from the ground, is as high as a 7-storey building. The 845 square metre wing area is big enough to park 70 cars. The A380 can fly a staggering 15,000 kilometres without refuelling, and in order to do that, it needs to carry 310,000 litres of fuel, making the plane's takeoff weight 560 tonnes. Incredibly though, the A380 will actually be more fuel efficient than other similar-sized jumbo jets. Airbus claim that the plane will burn about 3 litres of fuel per passenger per 100 kilometres, making it as economical to run as a family car. The building of the A380 is a remarkable example of transnational cooperation. The final assembly line is in Toulouse in France, but this is only the end of an impressively complicated process. The construction of each aircraft is the result of collaboration between France, Germany, Britain and Spain. The wings, for example, are built in England and Wales. The main sections of the fuselage are constructed in Hamburg, Germany. Parts for the nose and the tail are in fact made in Spain and only assembled in Germany. Everything is then shipped to France to be put together. The A380 jigsaw gets even more complicated, however. Although a European venture, few people realise how much of the plane is actually made or designed outside the EU. The wings, for example, were created by designers in Wichita in the United States. Some wing panels, the wheels, and most of the cockpit electronics are also made in America. In fact, in terms of actual cost, almost half the aircraft is made in the USA.
When did you begin learning English?
I studied medicine in the Netherlands for 8.5 years, and I started learning English in middle school with German and French. In my work I travel all over the world. Well, now I'm in China only for a few weeks, but I have traveled with the Red Cross to most countries in the world.
What is the Dutch approach to teaching English in medical school?
When I was at university, all of our teaching was in Dutch, but all the textbooks were in English. At the time, there was a movement going on in Holland to make all the teaching in English. I followed this movement very strongly because in my profession, it's important to communicate in English. Most of the research done in the world is in English too, so I need to be able to understand it, to evolve.
What was your initial reaction to dealing with medical journals in English?
Oh, it was difficult to read all the time in English, and I certainly had a lot to do. I still do today. I think it was difficult also because I didn't know the terms in Dutch either. I was learning the profession. Although because of the volume of reading I had to do, I soon improved my reading skills. I had to find information quickly, but be sure not to miss anything important. This helps me now when I have to do research on the internet and separate relevant from irrelevant documents.
And what do you do when confronted with a document that you find difficult to understand?
Oh, I've been a doctor for 25 years and a surgeon for 10 years, so I very rarely have problems with medical documents.
Yeah.
However, when I have to read political documents about the country I'm in, which is often the case as I travel to many war zones, I try to understand the gist. So, to do this, I look quickly over the articles and take a few notes as I read.
Do you sometimes wish you could read English better for your work, or is your level sufficient to get by?
I'm never really happy with my level, but it's enough for my work. I think I have to accept it. I have application forms to read and fill out in English, and these are a little more complicated as they don't use medical terms.
How do you actively improve your English?
Oh,
If you don't, is there a reason? Is your current level sufficient for your professional needs?
at the moment, I'm working a lot with Chinese and French people, so I'm reading a lot in French. But soon I'm going to Scotland, and there I will read more in English. I find the more I read in a foreign language, the easier it becomes, because you start recognizing more words. Basically, I can manage in English, but I never stop reading, so I'm always learning.
So why exactly does your job have a reputation for being stressful?
Stress is generally driven by the feeling of being out of control of a situation and the feeling of a situation controlling you. Trading financial markets combines both these scenarios. Your financial position can change in a matter of seconds, and what changes that position is generally a situation beyond your control as a trader. It is possible to lose in seconds what may have taken you a year to make. It's the feeling of uncertainty, being out of control, that causes the stress.
How do you relax in the evening?
I very rarely do anything work-related, so it's easy to escape the markets. I generally go to the gym or go for a run, especially if I've had a bad day. I always cook a meal rather than have a takeaway to do something my brain would regard as creative. I find it quite therapeutic. More often than not, I will watch some TV before going to bed, as I find it helps me to wind down. If I go to bed straight after work, it's harder to sleep.
What do you do to beat stress at the weekend?
I like to be busy and active. I like the feeling of having achieved something over the weekend and it being productive. I definitely don't like wasting days. Most weekends are a mixture of household jobs like fixing something, shopping or gardening, and socialising with friends. I also go to watch Arsenal at least once a week.
Do you think what you do to relax is an effective way to beat stress?
I don't think there is a specific rule about how to beat stress. I generally find that what I do is effective for me.
Would you consider changing your job because of the high stress factor?
I have considered leaving my job due to stress-related factors. I do, however, think that an element of stress is a good thing, and if used the right way, can actually be a positive thing. It can lead to a change in direction, success, and stimulate you to do something new.
What do you enjoy about the stressful aspects of your job?
Well, having said all that, I do actually enjoy an element of uncertainty. It keeps you on your toes. I enjoy a mental challenge. Trading triggers a very wide range of emotions, second by second. How you deal with and manage those emotions dictates short, medium and long-term trading performance and success.
Do you become less stressed the longer you do the job, or does it become more stressful as you go on?
I would say it remains constant. The source and the nature of the stress changes, and how you deal with it changes due to experience, but it's always there.
Spotlight on Brazil.
This week's edition of Sustainable Cities goes to Brazil. Here's our correspondent, Sergio Nascimento, to tell us about a place that found a different way to meet some of the challenges of modern life way back in the 1970s.
Hello! I've come to somewhere that has collected numerous awards for its innovative approach to urban living, Curitiba.
Many governments are only now putting people back at the heart of city centre planning. Curitiba convinced people to stop relying on their cars several decades ago. How did they do it, Sergio?
Well, it started with an inspired and far-sighted mayor who, with a few colleagues, created what must be one of the fastest pedestrianisation schemes in history. Over the course of a weekend, they blocked off some of the city centre streets and started planting flowers with the help of local children. This overcame the opposition of the shopkeepers, who thought their businesses would suffer. They soon saw the centre could bring in far more customers than they'd had before. Popular support for a more people-friendly city grew from there.
The city itself has grown considerably since those days, I believe.
It supports a population of more than 2.5 million people today, and it shares the problems of many developing urban areas in South America. Immigration from the countryside, the pressure for housing, and so on. Yet it has found some very original solutions. For example, instead of putting people into anonymous housing projects, it helped them to build their own homes.
Really?
By recognizing that many people already had the skills needed for construction work, it gave them support in the form of materials and advice from architects, and then let them get on with the job. That way, people have a real investment in where they live, and really want to look after the place once it's built.
Is it true that the city has one of the most extensive and efficient transport systems anywhere in the world?
Yeah, that's right. There's a whole network of different types of buses that run into and around the city in their own dedicated bus lanes. It's coordinated by the city council, but privately financed. They managed to get transport companies to provide such a comprehensive service by paying them for the number of kilometers they cover, not the number of passengers they carry. There are buses every minute in the rush hour, so the system can carry something like 2 million people. That's more than in New York.
And they connect everywhere to everywhere else.
Neighbourhoods, to workplaces, to hospitals, to tourist attractions. Nearly 70% of all journeys are by bus. The whole system pays for itself, and it's been developed largely on the existing streets, without knocking down buildings, so the character of the neighbourhoods is maintained.
Have they forgotten about cyclists?
No. There's a network of about 150 kilometres of cycle paths around the city. And parallel to the transport systems, they've developed a network of Farois der Saber, or lighthouses of knowledge.
What are they?
They're free educational centres placed around the city, which have libraries, internet access, and other cultural resources. People can get help with job training, social welfare, and access to educational programs. Another thing they're keen on are the tree planting initiatives and the development of green spaces. They even use sheep to keep the grass down. It is much cheaper and it helps regenerate the soil.
And the secret to all this is planning.
It's not only planning, it's involving local people in decision-making from the start. Public participation has ensured that the system has continued, even though the man who started it all is no longer mayor.
Fascinating. Now, tell us about the recycling programme, Sergio.
Today, I'm going to talk about business and ethics. First, I'll look at what is meant by business ethics. Then, I'll examine the kind of ethical considerations companies need to address, how they can go about doing business in a more ethical way, and look at some examples of ethical business practices. So, what are business ethics, and why are they seen as important in today's business climate? Business ethics relate to how a company conducts its business in order to make a profit. Although the primary goal of the company may be to make money, it also recognizes that it has a responsibility towards the society in which it operates. The term corporate social responsibility is often used, and nowadays many companies have strong corporate social responsibility programs designed to help create a prosperous, inclusive society. Now I'll look at some basic ethical considerations that a company needs to address. The first area is how the company treats its employees. All employees should be treated fairly and with respect. A company that cares for its workers' welfare will tend to have a happier workforce and a lower turnover of staff. It is also important that workers are recruited on a basis of equal opportunity. The second area is how a company conducts its day-to-day business. In a manufacturing business, this includes how suppliers of raw materials are chosen and treated. A good example of this is the Fair Trade movement. This initiative ensures that small-scale farmers are paid directly and at a fair price for their crops. A company should also look at its policy on paying suppliers and ensure that payments are made on time. Another ethical consideration is the impact the business has on the environment. Manufacturing companies should strive to ensure that production is clean and careful, and look for ways to minimize energy consumption and waste products. Finally, a company can also decide to give something back to the community it operates in. This can be in the form of corporate giving programs, where donations are given to community projects, or by initiating schemes to improve the local community and encouraging employees to work on these schemes.
Change management.
Hi, Sue. How are things?
Fine, yeah.
OK, now, about the change in your work routine, you're going to work Saturdays from next month.
Yes, but why should I have to work on Saturdays? No one's told me why this is necessary.
I'm sorry, this should have been explained to you. We get a lot of people calling now on Saturdays for information about our products. It's important that we answer these questions. Is that OK? Any more questions?
No. OK.
Great. Well, how's your course coming along? You're learning how to make websites.
The course is great. It's not that difficult. I'm helping my son make a website at home. It's fun.
Great. You'll be able to work on our site soon then.
Sure. What's happening in the other departments? Is someone there working on Saturdays too?
I'm afraid I can't tell you that at the moment. Because they're different departments, I can't say, really.
Are there any other courses I can take after the website designer course finishes?
There are one or two that could be useful. Let's talk again about this once you've finished the web course.
OK. You know, Bob, I'd like to ask you something. It's good that you take the time to talk to me about my work and things. But don't you think it'd be a good idea to talk things through together? You know, have a meeting with everyone in our department, see what everybody thinks, all together. If we talk things through together, I think we could come up with some great ideas on how to improve things here.
I agree, Sue. It would be good for everyone to meet together, especially now that we've got so many changes coming along. You know, the problem is that we haven't got a room big enough for us all to meet together, so...
It was just an idea.
Asha, chaos theory seems to be a branch of physics or mathematics. You're an economist, so how does it influence your line of work?
Well, in a number of ways. I'm responsible for financial development programs in many parts of the world, so forecasting long-range trends and making predictions on the basis of present evidence is what I do. Chaos theory was developed by scientists trying to explain the movement of the planets and changes in environmental conditions. Both of these things are also about making long-term predictions on the basis of present evidence.
Are many economists involved in this field?
An increasing number. In the 1990s, a lot of economists began to look at chaos theory as a way of providing models for forecasting.
What kind of models are we talking about here?
Well, that's a good question because, of course, the basic idea of chaos theory is that there aren't any models as such. There aren't guaranteed forms, but rather patterns of change and development.
Doesn't that mean that forecasting is impossible?
No, but it certainly makes it more of a challenge. Mandelbrot, who did the experiment with stock exchange prices, for example, noted that although the outcomes were variable, there were in fact certain constants. What we have to do is make sure we know what these are and take into account all the possible variables.
But do economics and finance work in the same way as weather conditions or the movement of plants?
Well, no, of course not. But there are certain underlying similarities. In the past, people thought of these things as linear systems. Now we know they're not.
What do you mean by linear system?
Well, for example, in a classic linear system, if I do A, then I know that B will happen and C will occur as a result of this, and so on. But according to chaos theory, a number of variables can change what will happen between A and B, and then between B and C.
Sounds complicated.
Yes. Well, it is complicated. There's no escaping that. However, a lot of what chaos theory teaches us is simply about accepting uncertainty. We have to accept uncertainty. We can't guarantee that things will turn out as we planned them when working with complex, non-linear systems, nor sometimes with simple systems.
Cinema and politics.
You may have heard recently about what is being called the return of political cinema, following recent releases such as Munich and The Constant Gardener. So today I'm going to look at what political cinema is and give a little overview of the history of political filmmaking in Hollywood. First of all, what do I mean by political cinema or political films? To me, the terms refer to films that make people aware of political or social situations. To give a recent example, the film Hotel Rwanda caused many people to take notice of the political situation in Rwanda for perhaps the first time. The dramatic imagery of film can often be far more powerful than news reports. For many, the heyday of political filmmaking was the 1970s. Watergate, the Vietnam War, and mainstream actors with social consciences such as Jane Fonda, Robert Redford and Warren Beatty made for a number of political films. Think of All the President's Men, which detailed the scale of corruption in Watergate, or Apocalypse Now, which graphically portrayed the horror of the Vietnam War. Political filmmaking didn't start in the 70s, though. Back in the 1940s and 50s, Hollywood produced films detailing social problems such as unemployment and alcoholism. In 1967, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, a comedy about a white couple whose daughter brings home a black fiancé, covered what was then pretty much a taboo subject, that of interracial relationships. As I said, the 70s saw a sudden increase in political films, which carried on to some extent into the 80s, with the release of films